What cinema moment slash experience slash scene blew your mind away? Cheesy, I know, but I watched The Sixth Sense at the cinema when it was first released and nobody knew what the big twist was. There was a collective gasp in the audience when the big reveal happened, and I remember thinking I couldn't believe I hadn't seen it coming at all. One reason that movie works so well is that the kid's story is written like it's what the movie is really about, and when it results in the scene with his mother in the car, you're expecting the movie to be over and you mostly turn off your brain. Slash recree. Unfortunately, I had the movie spoiled for me many times before seeing it. I still enjoyed the film, but I was robbed of the proper experience. In Signs, when the alien appears between the bushes in the birthday party on the news. No matter how many times I've seen that movie, I still jump in that scene. Absolutely still gives me chills. When the dinosaurs appeared on Jurassic Park, I remember being in awe of how real it looked. For all the hype building up to the movie, and as much as the critics lauded the effects, that one scene exceeded everyone's expectations. That music building to a crescendo, panning across the lush valley filled with dinosaurs, and that, welcome to Jurassic Park. I had the joy of seeing it on the big screen at the Royal Albert Hall with a live orchestra a few years ago. That scene was still stunning. LOTR. The Two Towers. Near the end of the Battle of Helm's Deep, when Gandalf leads a wave of riders charging down a hillside toward the orc armies, on a big screen. It was fantastically epic. Pure goosebumps. There are so many moments in the Lord of the Rings trilogy can be named here. Seeing the city dwarfed elfin fellowship. The beginning of Two Towers. Also, the wide shot of Gandalf and the Balrog falling into the caverns. Absolutely breathtaking. For me it was in the Fellowship, when the scene panned from Gandalf at the top of Isengard Tower to the bottom with the orcs. I watched it in a cinema, and it was packed. From the front row it felt like being on a theme park ride. On the lowest of keys, when Caesar shouted no in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, it felt like the air was taken out of the theater. I swore the theater got a lot colder for a secretary when he screamed that. I heard someone a few rows back go, oh shit, and it mirrored how everyone was feeling lol. I still remember, 22 years later, sitting in the theater in enwrapped silence for the entire 25-minute long storming Omaha Beach opening scene in Saving Private Ryan. I interviewed a gentleman who was the second wave in on Omaha Beach, and he said, when this movie came out, he and his buddies from the war went to go see it. He claims the movie is the most accurate representation of what it was like, and the only outstanding difference between the movie and the actual war was that they cussed way more in the movie than they did at war. Huh, that's funny. I figured they cussed a ton in the movie to be war accurate. Didn't realize that was an addition. One of my earliest cinema memories is from Episode V, The Empire Strikes Back. At the end of the film, Luke is back aboard the Millennium Falcon having had a new prosthetic arm attached. There's a very quick close shot of the prosthetic tendons in his arm moving before they flip the cover closed and get back to the story. That tiny glimpse below the surface blew me away as a kid, and I still think of it 30 something years later. Some years ago, I got to talking with a professor of film study and history, so I asked him what his favorite scene in movies was, figuring it would be something esoteric or whatever. He said the Mos Eisley spaceport scene in Star Wars. The reason was that up to that point, aliens were either terribly done or were of the man in the suit variety. But that minute where they enter the cantina and the camera jumps between realistic looking aliens of all types sent a clear message that this wasn't going to be just another sci-fi movie. And if cinema and film were forever changed by Star Wars, it was that scene that did it. Yeah, the cantina scene is a bit underrated as a best scene in Star Wars and cinema in general. I'd compare it to Dorothy walking out of the drab farmhouse and into the magical land of Oz saying we're not in Kansas anymore. This is where the movie transitions hard into fantasy and the story really starts. The viewer realizing everything so far was just set up for this. The intro scene to Saving Private Ryan. Saving Private Ryan is the single greatest anti-war movie ever filmed. Its action scenes really make you hate what we put young boys through. RIP to all the real men and women who died, because humans are trash. I don't think SBR was anti-war. It showed the horrors of war, but necessarily that WWII shouldn't have been fought. If anything, the movie was to honor the men who did fight. You think Steven Spielberg was anti-WWII? When the cruiser came on screen in the first Star Wars, Episode 4, saw it in a 35mm theater. The screen was 60 feet tall. I bet that was brilliant. Just this week our local theater/cinema decided to bring back Episode V because there are no good new movies coming out right now, and because it's the 40th anniversary and all. I dragged my husband to go see it because I love the original trilogy probably more than any of the other movies and had never seen any of them on a big screen before. It was pretty awesome and I can only imagine how good Episode 4 was in theater, especially when it was just out. The first scene of Inglourious Basterds. The tension just builds and builds and builds. It's incredibly emotionally draining and unforgettable. And they create all this tension straight off the bat. All the character setup and introduction to the plot has to happen right there in that scene. Also how it really doesn't feel like it, but that scene is like 20 minutes long. It just pulls you in. Christoph Waltz did a hell of a job. Christoph was so amazing. I had never been so FCK and terrified of a character before. In the theater, I ended up sinking incredibly low in my seat and felt my fingers trembling. Incredible performance. I remember sitting in the theater with my best friends watching Inception. When the rotating hallway sequence started I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I turned to my friends. All their mouths were slightly ajar, just in disbelief. I really miss going to the cinema. I had to scroll too far down to see this. I'm going to go with a different tone. There have been plenty of gorgeous visuals and what just happened moments. But one striking visual that I will never forget is the rocks on Oskar Schindler's grave at the end of Schindler's List. No other scene in movie history has been more powerful and profound to me than that scene. To see the real people that he saved and their descendants paying their respects. Holy shit you guys. That broke me. The scene that got me was when he was talking about the things he could have sold, like his Nazi party pin. I could have saved more. That's the moment I burst into tears. I sobbed like a child when I watched that scene. I went to this movie with about 10 of my friends. We were all in college. A few of them had grandparents who were Holocaust survivors. And we were all crying. I keep saying this over and over again here on Reddit. But seriously though, children of men. When the shooting stops. Yeah, hands down that is one of my favorite movie scenes of all time. The whole movie is a masterpiece. Truly a breathtaking vision of a near future. The Iron Giant. Watching him fly into the nuke to save the town from certain death. I was so young it was the first time I ever grasped the concept of death and the first time I had ever cried during a movie. Superman. Vin Diesel can get tears from me in the lowest number of syllables of any actor. Yes, I've cried twice for his large well-meaning characters with limited dialogue who sacrifice themselves at the end of the movie to save the ones they love, but thankfully are alive at the very end. Two moments in The Dark Knight stick out to me. Joker's video of him taunting the guy in the fake Batman suit when he goes from silly to the way he says look at me. Holy shit. The silence after that scream was incredible. The other part is the semi-flipping over. Still remember hearing gasps in the theater when it happened. Yeah, that growl/yell of look at me grabs you by the duck and balls, man. The T-Rex breaking through the fence and attacking the kids in the car in Jurassic Park. I was 9 when I saw it in the cinema. The whole scene from start to finish was fantastic. You know what makes that scene so impactful? Apart from the obvious visuals and cinematography, there's no music. No score, just the sound of rain, the fence breaking apart, and the T-Rex. It makes it unbearably tense, and I wish more filmmakers would follow that example. Holy crap, I never realized that. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.